Zodia Blackwing woke up with a yawn, stretching as she sits up in the bed. She rolls over to grab her glasses from the small nightstand before slowly getting up with a weary groan. She didn't want to get up. Zodia would have preferred to stay asleep, where her life wasn't filled with needless pain and solitude. But she didn't have a choice if she wanted to avoid her adopted mother's wrath. With a sigh, she got up and dressed in her school uniform before quickly brushing her long dark hair and grabbing her satchel. Zodia rushed along, heading downstairs to wait for the school bus. As soon as she stepped out into the living room, she heard her mother's irritated voice snapping at her from the couch. "You'd better fucking hurry up, girl. The bus won't wait forever." Zodia sighed in defeat. This occurred every morning, and she knew it didn't matter what she said next. Her adoptive mother would still find a reason to give her a verbal lashing. She replies in a weary tone, resisting the urge to roll her eyes. "I know, Mom, but I'm early. It won't be..." Her mother's expression grew angry as she shouted at Zodia. "Don't you take that tone with me, little girl, and you better stop that damn back-talking or your ass is grass. You can't fucking listen, you know that? That's what your problem is, Zodia. You need to clean out your fucking ears and learn to pay attention when I'm talking to you, girl. You better wipe that damn glare off your face, too, before I give you something to be mad about. Now get your ass outside and wait for the damn bus. We'll discuss your consequences when you get home, young lady. Damn brat." Zodia flinched at the shrill sound of her mother's voice as she was shouted at. She knew better than to speak up or walk away. That would only make it worse, and she didn't want to find herself under extra punishment. So she waited until the end before muttering, "Yes, ma'am," and quickly darting outside to find the school bus pulling up to her driveway. Relieved, she ran to board it immediately without glancing back. Moving to the back of the bus, she took a seat further back from the other students, keeping to herself as always. It was just easier that way. Lost in thought, Zodia stared through the window as the bus made its journey to pick up the remainder of the students. She was only 15, so she couldn't leave on her own. But she couldn't take another day of torment from her stepmother while her father watched in silence. Zodia didn't have any friends. Anytime she did make a new friend, her parents drove them away with their drama. So she didn't have anyone to rely on for help. And she didn't have anyone she could trust either. Before she knew it, the bus was pulling up in front of the school entrance. Walking through the halls by herself, Zodia headed to her locker as she glanced longingly at the groups of students hanging around and chatting as they waited for the bell to signal the start of classes. How lucky were they to have normal lives, she thought to herself as she opened her locker to grab her textbooks for the first class of the day. Everything was moving along as normal, with Zodia sitting quietly at the back of each class, her nose buried in a library book. That is, until 5th period, when the history teacher, Mrs. Rumsey, introduced a new student. Zodia looked up from the library book she'd been distracting herself with, confusion written across her face. A new student this late in the school day? Something smelled very fishy. Her chocolate doe eyes scan over the boy as the teacher introduces him. He was tall and incredibly good-looking, with striking green eyes below messy blonde hair. The boy looked directly at Zodia, his cocky smirk widening as if he knew her, as their gazes met. This caused a quizzical look to fill her gentle features. Was she imagining things? She couldn't focus throughout the remainder of class, eager to question the boy whose name turned out to be Zach. She found herself glancing across the room at him occasionally, noticing that he seemed to be subtly watching her from the corner of his eye as he sketched something in his notebook. Neither of them paying Miss Rumsey any attention. Finally, the bell rang to signal the end of 5th period, and she began to quickly gather her things so she could catch up to Zach before their next class. There were many questions she needed to ask him. Why did he join the class so late in the day? Why did he seem to know her? And most importantly, what was up with his energy? When he had first entered the classroom, the entire atmosphere had changed, as if he had somehow filled the room with electricity. And looking at him, Zodia could sense that he was someone dangerous. His energy had felt heavy and dark on the surface, charged with electricity and intimidation with mischief mixed in, but there was a lot more below it that she couldn't quite make out. She had never felt anything like it before, and it piqued her curiosity. As she moved to rise from her desk, she bumped into someone. Looking up to see who it was, surprise flickered across her girlish features, and she saw that it was Zack, and it appeared that he had approached her. That was different. Nobody really approached her unless they needed help with something. A smirk widens on his face as he caught the surprise in Zodia's expression, and he leaned in closer, speaking in a teasing tone. "What's the matter, Bella? Already got a crush?" His voice was smooth and deep, with an accent that sounded either Hispanic or Latino, and it made Zodia feel weak as a faint blush crept up into her cheeks. She quickly shook off her thoughts as she remembered that there were answers she needed to get from him. Clearing her throat, she shouldered her satchel, speaking in a casual tone. "I don't know you well enough for that." Before she could finish, Zack grabbed her hand and pulled her to follow him, a low chuckle rumbling from his chest. "Come with me, Bella. Let's talk somewhere quiet. There are some things you'd be interested in learning."